Hello folks, happy hump day. Happy hump day, happy Wednesday. I'm just going to get you guys up on my Facebook feed so that I can see your comments. How are you all today? How are you on this lovely, gorgeous Wednesday? Slightly rainy, grey, slightly wet Wednesday, but how are you? How are you all doing? Hello Lynn, nice to see you, thanks for joining. Hopefully you're all keeping busy, even though the weather is atrocious. Hopefully you're all good. Hello Olivia, hello, nice to see you. So I had great fun being at the studio yesterday. It was so nice, but obviously I'm back now in my home, crouched cross-legged on the floor, back with you guys here today. But it's just as nice. Not sad about not having my big studio space at all. Hi Dad, hi Toby and Diane, hi, glad you're joining us again. Hello Helen. Hello Rosie, Edith, Pinkie Pie and all of Edith's dolls. Amazing that they're joining us, fantastic. Toby likes Stitch, excellent, yeah, Stitch is one of my favourites. Lilo and Stitch is one of my favourite Disney films, great film. Who else have we got? Chris and Sophie, Tabitha and Jocelyn, and hello Sue. You've been for a long walk this morning in this weather. I hope you wrapped up warm and kept nice and dry. So today we're going to be painting with some different layers, which is why hopefully you guys have got some kind of hairdryer or something with you, and some kitchen towels so that we can just kind of dry bits of it off as we go. I'm going to work top to bottom, so hopefully it'll dry fairly quickly. And we're mainly going to be using one colour for this and then just add in slightly other colours. So we're going to really layer up this landscape. And we're going to work portrait, which I don't often do, but we are going to work portrait for this one. Hi Joe, hi Katie and boys, hello. Oh, it's sunny where you are, Helen. Nice. Yeah, it's definitely not here. Definitely not. So hopefully you guys have got your watercolour paints, some water, paper, and some kind of hairdryer or something like that. If you don't have a hairdryer or anything like that, don't worry. It's just that you will have to wait in between the layers for them to dry. So you can always watch this video and then come back and watch it later if you want to add on the extra layers. So there's no rush, okay? So I'm going to drop you guys down because we need to see what we're doing. So hopefully you guys can see, I'll angle you more that way, my portrait piece of paper. Hello Severin. Severin's joined us as well. Hello. So I'm going to use a fairly big brush to kind of get us going. And what we're going to do is actually start at the lightest colour. So whatever colour you're going to use. So I'm going to use this, probably the darkest colour that I've got, which is this kind of dark brown. And that's what I'm going to use. But you just want it really light. So the idea is to add as much water to it as you can and not much pigment to keep it going. And the kind of shape that I'm going to do, because these are kind of going to be the clouds really, is up here really. And I'm just going to wet it, really wet it, because you want it really nice and light. And I'm actually going to put some over the other side here as well. So can you see, hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. Hi Mum, just joined us. So really light here. And then I've just got this, I'm going to smudge that a little bit by adding water so it's not such a hard line. And I might drop just a little bit more pigment into here. But you want to keep it really light. Really light. This is the top part of our sky. Okay, and I'm literally just used probably the top quarter really of the page. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'm going to lift it up because it's quite wet, but hopefully you guys can see the top part of my page. Okay, so just really light, not much pigment in there at all. And this is where I'm going to start adding in just a slightly different colour as well. I'm going to bring that all the way to the edge there and bring it down to here. So you don't have to use the darkest colour. Severin was just asking that because I'm using the darkest colour I've got. It's just that when you get down to the bottom layer, of the very front layer, that's in your foreground, you will need it really, really quite dark or quite vivid. So just make sure you go really, really light to start off with. And we're going to be doing about 5 layers. So I'm going to add in a little bit of, I've got like a kind of scarlety red here. And it doesn't matter what colour, I've just decided to go for brown. And then I'm adding a tiny bit, as you can see, these are my clouds coming up, of the red there. And that's just going to nicely smudge into and blend into that brown. Okay, I'm going to try and hold this up, but I think the colour might all run. So that's my top layer. I'm going to put it down so it doesn't run. Okay, so it doesn't matter what colour. You could go for green, you could go for blue, but I would try and go for a darker blue. You wouldn't want to go for a lighter blue or like a cornflower blue because that would be too light. But a darker colour. So I'm now just going to dry that off, but I just want the bottom bit of that to dry. So I'm not worried about the top being dry, but just the bottom bit so that we can then do our next layer. So that's dry-ish. That's dry-ish. So I'm going to put our next layer on now. And our next layer is going to take the same kind of shape because we're still going to be doing kind of clouds. So it's going to come here and go up here. So it's a similar kind of shape. And we're going to start it with that red. And then I'm going to bring the brown into it. So this is still our sky. So it's still fairly light. I'm using quite a big brush here. So I'm just going to vary that top line so it's not so straight. You get many straight clouds. So that's as far as I'm going with that red, and then I'm going to add in a little bit of brown there and then the water that will just bring that down. And I'm probably going to go a fair way down with this because I'm then going to get another layer. Our next layer is going to be like a mountain coming up the other side. So I'm going to probably take that all the way over to there. And maybe just a little bit more pigment. Okay, so that's the top of our cloud. I'm going to bring that water down because I don't want any hard lines on there when I come to add the next layer. I don't then want a hard line going across. Okay, so can you guys see? Hopefully you can see what I've done there. So that's our second cloud. Oh, who's that? Melissa. Oh, that's Charlotte. Hello, Charlotte. You managed to join us. Excellent. So I'm just going to use the hairdryer again just to dry off that bottom layer. You can almost see the I don't know if you can see that actually on there. Hopefully you can. You can almost see the colour running away as I'm blowing it, which gives you quite a nice texture, quite a nice design on there. Oh, Diane, if you don't have the proper watercolour paper, then it won't absorb. So the difference between normal paper and watercolour paper is that the watercolour paper will really absorb the water and therefore helps it kind of blend. But if you use slightly more pigment, and actually obviously I'm using lots of water because I've got the watercolour paper. If you use slightly less water and more pigment, that will help if you're using paper that's not watercolour paper. So keep trying to have a go. Olivia said yours is so much better. I've had a few years practice. And that is all it is. It is just about practice. So don't give up. Don't worry. Right, so we're going to go for a more, a harder kind of edge on our next layer, because this is going to be the first layer of the first mountain that's coming down. So I'm going to start up here. Yeah, about there. So that's about a third of the way down. I'm starting there. And I'm just going to bring this down and across and back up here. Okay. And then I'm going to use the water underneath that line, because we want to leave the top line being a really nice straight edge as such with the pigment. So I'm just going to use the water underneath that line, soften the bottom line, and then we're going to add in a little bit more pigment as well. Okay, because we want this layer to be quite a bit darker than that first one. So bring that, there we go, that is a bit more colour going on there. Okay, and you can bring that down quite a way. So you want to bring that down about here. Out to the next quarter. And then I want to make sure that we catch this edge before it dries too much. And then we're actually going to add a couple of little bits in the along the skyline, along the horizon of this one. So we're going to make it look a little bit more mountain-like by adding a couple of little bits that will look like trees. Once I'm done. So you use a little bit more water here just to spread that down. There we go. So again, just using a little bit of pigment, I'm just going to bring this up while it's still wet, and I'm just going to make out just a tiny little tree, smaller one next to it, and then I might do a couple of smaller ones here. There we go. So I'm going to attempt to hold this up so you can see my first layer. So can you see the really tiny, almost tips of the trees on there? Tiny bits. Yeah. So Alfie said, if I make a mistake, it's okay, because Nell just says, just smudge it. Yes, absolutely, Alfie. If in doubt with watercolours, if you're using watercolour paper, add more water and smudge it. Absolutely brilliant. So I should have that on a t-shirt. I'm just going to dry off that bottom bit again. I should have brought home yesterday my heat gun, which is so much hotter than my hairdryer. It would have dried it much quicker. So we're going to add the next layer on. So we've got our 2 layers of clouds at the top, bringing in that other colour. We're just going to use the one colour now, and that's our first layer, our first mountain as such. So we're going to add the next one in. So again, I'm going to use that same colour, but we're going to go slightly darker, so add slightly more pigment. And we're just going to vary that kind of line. So I'm just going to bring it up. And then bring it a bit lower and up here. There we go. And then again, use the water underneath to just smudge that line underneath. Just smudge it, as Alfie says, I always say. And then just add in a little bit more pigment to that as well, because again, we want to make this layer a little bit darker than the layer on top. So you can see I'm adding quite a lot in here. Okay, and then again, just use the water, bring it down a little bit. Probably want to bring it down quite a way, because our front layer is going to come in then, in the foreground. So I'm going to add a lot more pigment to this layer as well, so that it's darker. There we go. So hopefully you guys can see that coming along. How are you all doing with it? Are you all good? So I'm just layering up the colour here and adding in a little bit more pigment where I can. Okay. So Diane, if you're not using watercolour paper, this will probably be easier for you to do the darker pigments because you'll need less water. So along that skyline, again, I'm going to add in a little tree. I might add one up here actually. That's going to, oh, it's a little bit dark. There we go. That's going to just pop up here. I could put a couple of little layers on. And I'm just using the very, very tip of the brush. I know I've got quite a fat brush that I'm using today. I'm just using the very, very tip of it to pick out those details. I will hold that up so that you can see that. So I've just done it slightly bigger than the ones on the layer before. I'm just bringing it to the front. Okay, I might add in another one. Ooh, put my fingers in it. In another one over here as well, I think. Maybe slightly smaller. There we go. And then bring that colour into there. Now, what I am going to do to give us a little bit of a texture going on in that foreground, or mid-ground I suppose, we haven't done the foreground yet, is I'm just going to use a bit of paper towel to just dab, just randomly, over that bit of paper, which of course helps it dry quicker as well. So can you see the different texture that I've got coming in there? Where the watercolour paper, the kitchen towel soaks up some of the pigment, some of the paint that you've put down. So it can be a really nice different technique that you're getting, as opposed to, and it gives you kind of sharper lines as opposed to when we dropped in the water where it kind of dispersed and again created a different effect. It gives you much sharper lines. So our final layer, let's have a look at the dryness of that. I might just dry that off very, very quickly. There we go. I've just blown my kitchen paper away. Diane, no problem. Come back later. Come back later and re-watch it once you've got your watercolour paper. Definitely worth using watercolour paper for this one. So this final front layer, I'm just going to layer up here and then go up to there. So can you see that again, I'm just varying the shape of that bottom layer. This is going to be our final layer. This is the darkest layer. So whatever colour you're using, this is where you need to use lots and lots of pigment. So I'm just taking just the water for now up to that top layer. I don't know if you can see that. You've still got that really nice strong line on top, and then the water just drags it down. So I'm going to take that water now all the way to the bottom, and then I'm going to add in some more of the pigment as I go, because we want to make this really nice and dark, this layer. I will get some more kitchen paper as well. There we go. So really, really dark, lots and lots of pigment, lots and lots of paint in this one. Okay. If you have made a mistake, I know Alfie said just smudge it, but if you have made a mistake and you're really, really worried about it, whilst it's still wet, or you can add extra water and kind of agitate it a little bit with the brush, then dab it with the kitchen towel, so the kitchen towel absorbs the water as well as the paint. It can almost get rid of any kind of splodges or any bits that you don't like. So it's always worth having a bit of kitchen towel to hand, or a rag, or anything you might want, a reusable one if you're more green minded. There we go. So I'm going to take it right up to the top line there. It's got lots and lots of pigment, and right to the bottom. So hopefully you guys can see this. There we go. And of course, because it's the foreground, it's going to be the closest layer to you. We're going to do a nice big tree going up the middle. I'm going to get some kitchen paper though, to just dab away at a couple of little bits in that bottom bit, to just get a nice different texture there as well. There we go. I will show this to you guys as well so you can see. Okay, so just gives you a really, really nice different texture to use. So using, again, don't forget this is your darkest layer, so using quite a lot of paint and the very, very tip of the brush, we're going to take that line all the way up to there and bring it down at the bottom as well so that it really kind of blends into that. And then this kind of tree, we're just going to almost, it's almost like you're kind of flicking the brush at it really. And you're going to do it in kind of very thin layers going across. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing there. Make sure you can see. So I'm just doing it in kind of squiggly lines coming across. So that you get a really nice, lovely, lovely tree effect. And you're going to come just a little bit wider each time. And a little bit bigger each time. How are you guys doing? How are you coping with that? What point have you got to? Are you at the same point I am? Hopefully. Hopefully you're all there. So there's a couple of finishing touches we need to add to this. I think we need some birds. And we need some kind of grass coming up along the bottom here. I'm going to add a few bits coming off there. There we go. So that is my tree. Let me hold that up and show you, which will help that bottom bit spread along there. And then I think I'm just going to add a few kind of, maybe just nearer the tree, just kind of squiggly lines coming up along here. And again, just using the very, very tip of your brush so you get nice thin lines. There we go. I think that's probably enough. And then again, I'm just going to rinse my brush off and just use the water just to make sure that that all blends really nicely into our colour there at the bottom. Let's lift that up so you can see. Okay, so we've just added a couple of squiggly lines really, just to give us those kind of weeds coming up or grass that might be coming up underneath that tree. So birds. So the birds we're going to do are like little V shapes. So they just come down and flick back up. And we're going to use, again, just the very, very tip of the brush so we get really nice thin lines for these. So I'm just going to add a couple. You don't want to add huge amounts. I'm just going to add a couple there, and maybe a couple in the distance here. And I might add a couple that are a little bit more watery in here, just so it kind of looks like they're a bit further away. 3 there, maybe one over here as well. Put a little bit more pigment with there. There we go. Okay, and then we need our sun. So I'm going to use that red colour that I used for the very edge, the very top edge of the clouds, because I think that is why that colour is coming through the clouds. It's the sun trying to poke through. So I'm going to go back to that red colour and using lots and lots of pigment. So I'm probably going to add some more pigment to this as well. You want a really bright sun colour. You could use an orange, whatever colour you decided to tip the clouds with. Get some more on there. There we go. It's a real deep red sun here. It's like some kind of eclipse going on. And that's it. That's it. There you have it. So that layering up effect, a bit like the trees we did, the forest trees we did. It's a really, really effective way of working with watercolours and building up your landscapes. It's just thinking about them in layers. And making sure that you've got the foreground nice and dark. And that's it. That's today's. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you all have got on okay with that. Do take photos, post photos underneath of all your beautiful, wonderful creations. We want to see them. I did, when I was at the studio yesterday, pick up some of the happy notes. Which was the weekend challenge. So I did actually pick up some of those that somebody, a couple of people actually had hand posted. So thank you so, so much. It's not too late to send them. Carry on sending them to Arty Farty Retreat, whether you're posting them through the letterbox as you're walking past because you're local, or whether you're actually posting them using Royal Mail. That's absolutely fine. Keep going. They're a good cause. They're a good thing to do. Keep having a go. Who's that? That's Charlotte. Charlotte, don't worry. If you want to start again, start again. That's absolutely fine. It's all about practice. There's nothing else to it apart from practice. That's all it is. Tomorrow, you'll need your watercolour paints, watercolour paper, jar of water, your brushes. That's it. You won't need the hairdryer tomorrow. But you will need, if you can get like your biggest brush that you've got and your thinnest brush that you've got. So you'll need a very, 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 very thick, big brush and or whatever biggest one you've got. I've actually got a really nice big square one that I can use. And your thinnest one. That's what we're going to need for tomorrow. Oh, Helen's just asked for the sun again. Yeah, I can absolutely show you this. There we go. So it's just in between those two clouds there that it's tinging with colour. I will see you guys all tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Have a very good afternoon and evening. And Stitch will be back at 2 o'clock tomorrow as well. If you feel able to, I'd be so, so appreciative of you donating to Arty Farty Retreat. So I'll pop the link below. Thank you so, so much to everyone who's already donated and is supporting us. I can't even say thank you enough. So thank you. I will see you guys tomorrow. See you at 2 o'clock. Have fun.